Okay, guys, as you could probably see from our learning goal for today, we're going to be learning about the different groups that we can find on the periodic table. So part one is going to focus on three separate categories, which are metals, non-metals, and metalloids. So you need to download and print out this worksheet here so you can take a look at what it looks like. It should be available on EDSB in the link, so you can click on that and print that out so you have that to work from. All the information for this worksheet can be found in your textbook, but also on the PowerPoint that is available to you as well. So I'm just going to bring up that PowerPoint presentation that we're going to be using today. Here it is. I'm just going to go to the beginning. So here we are. So we're going to learn about those three groups on the periodic table, and we're going to carry on and learn about a few more tomorrow. So again, metals, non-metals, and metalloids. So what I'd like you to do is to have your worksheet out, and you can be filling in, just like a regular day, filling in that note based on the information in this PowerPoint. Now the nice thing about this is that you can pause the video anytime to finish copying it in and take as much time as you need. All right, so you're going to use the table to complete the classification of elements handout. So again, this classification of elements handout is also a handout that you can find in one of the links in the EDSB lesson for today. And you're going to see what it looks like. So again, all elements, the ones that we find on the periodic table, can be divided into those three categories we're learning about today. So we have metals, metalloids, and non-metals. And you can see here that metalloids are unique because they're kind of a hybrid of both metals and non-metals, so they share properties of both. So I'd like you to, again, get your classification of elements handout, and please copy these three categories that we're going to learn about today in. And again, you can pause this video at any time to finish copying in your note. So we're going to look at metals first, and I'm just going to show you where the metals are located on the periodic table. So I'm going to scroll through pretty quickly here. Don't worry, I'm going to come back to this stuff. So the metals, as you can see, are the ones that are highlighted in blue. So you can see that most of the elements on the periodic table here are metals. So we have different things like lithium, some things that you might be familiar with, like silver and gold and copper. There's copper, sorry. And some other things that you might not be that familiar with. Did you know calcium is actually a metal? So calcium, of course, is known to have, we need it for good, healthy bones and teeth, and that is actually a metal. So we're going to look about the properties of these elements specifically. So again, I'm just going to scroll back here to give you some time. So we're going to take a look at the properties of these metals. As we know, metals tend to be shiny and lustrous, right? Again, those are our physical properties that we learned about earlier in our unit. Most metals tend to be solids at room temperature, with the exception of mercury. And if you remember, mercury used to be a metal that we used in thermometers, but it is very toxic to the human body, so that has been replaced. They're ductile, so remember that means that they can be easily pulled into wires. They're malleable, and again, that means they can be easily hammered into a sheet. They're also very flexible. They tend to be good conductors of heat and electricity. So we tend to use things like copper in our home wiring. And you know, if you leave a metal spoon in a pot of hot water, or if you're making Kraft dinner or something like that, if you go back and touch the spoon, that heat has been transferred to the top of the spoon. It can be very hot. Again, some examples are things like copper, sodium, magnesium, zinc, and gold. And here are a few pictures, again, showing those properties. Shiny, lustrous. Here you can see is our liquid metal, which is mercury. So again, I want you to pause this video and finish copying this section into your worksheet. All right, we're going to move on to nonmetals. Now, nonmetals are located in the upper right portion of the periodic table. So I'm going to go back to this slide here. You can see our nonmetals are kind of the ones in this goldy brown color, and you can see that they're just located in this top right-hand portion of the periodic table. And it's interesting because although they are not as big in number in terms of metals, most living organisms are made of these nonmetals, this small little group over here. So that's kind of interesting. Now the properties of nonmetals, at room temperature, most of them are gases. There is a few solids and a couple liquids. And the liquid is bromine. When in solid form, they tend to be dull. They're not shiny at all. They tend to be brittle. They're not ductile or malleable, and they're very poor conductors of heat and electricity. Some examples of nonmetals are things like chlorine, carbon, helium, sulfur, and nitrogen. And here are some pictures to kind of show that. So again, there you can see a chlorine gas. That there is the liquid bromine. You can see bromine easily turns into a gas. You can see the colored gas at the top there. And then this is sulfur, which tends to be a very stinky, brittle element. So again, I'd like you to pause the video and finish copying this part of the note into your worksheet. Oops, it looks like I didn't plan that properly. That's okay. We're going to talk about metalloids. Now again, metalloids are kind of that hybrid element, which is a combination, has properties of both metals and nonmetals, and they are located along what we call the staircase of the periodic table. And again, I'm going to quickly scroll back to that periodic table here. You can see our metalloids are in green, and you can see that they do, starting with boron, make kind of a staircase pattern down the periodic table, ending with polonium. So these elements here, again, you can see because they're kind of on the fringe, or I shouldn't say the fringe, they're kind of located in between the metals and nonmetals. They tend to have properties of both. So let's write down those properties. Again, properties of both metals and nonmetals, and each metalloid is unique. So some of them are shiny, some of them aren't. For example, you could have an element that's shiny but a poor conductor of electricity. So again, you have that property of metal and non-metal. I'm going to talk about silicon, which is of course really important to our computer industry. So silicon tends to be shiny, although it is a brittle, and it's called something called a semiconductor. So a semiconductor allows electricity to flow through, but not easily. So it's a little bit of a slower process. And some examples are boron, astatine, antimony, and polonium. And here are a couple pictures. Again, you can see polonium is not shiny, whereas this element, actually, I can't remember which element that is. I'll have to double check that. So again, you can pause the video, pause the video here and finish copying that down. All right, so again, just to recap, we can see here in blue, we have the metals. Most of the elements on the periodic table are metals. We have our metalloids, which are located along the staircase, and then we have our non-metals. I did forget to point out that hydrogen, although it's over here, it is a non-metal. It's one of our only non-metals on the periodic table that's not located with the other ones. And for that reason, sometimes it's put into a group all on its own. So I want you to finish that worksheet. Then I would like you to read your textbook from pages 212 to 214, and I'd like you to finish the questions on page 215, number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.